Hi, my name's Chris. I'm just going to go through classification of buildings and structures as per the BCA 2014. There are basically 10 classifications, and they start from Class 1A, and the Class 1A is basically your typical little house. The important thing about a 1A is that it occupies from the ground level all the way through to the roof, and there's no other classification above or below it. You can have a row of 1As houses, but they're all separated generally with a fire rated wall between them, and these are all 1As. If you had two-story 1As, these are basically 2 or 3-story 1A. And you can see the separation is still down along this wall here. So these are 3-story Class 1A, so they're all 1As. A Class 2 is a little bit different. Class 2s, you've got, they're on top of each other. Still looks like a 1A. Has the same facilities as a 1A. The only difference is in a Class 2 is that it is on top of another use. Could be the same Class 2. So this is a 3-story Class 2 building. With the Class 1A and the Class 2 has the same sort of facilities. So basically in the Class 1A, you'll have your, your bedrooms, your lounge, your dining, kitchen, and your Class 2 has the same sort of things really. It has the bedroom, the lounge, dining, kitchen, and of course it has a laundry in the 1A as well. So basically in a house or in a dwelling, all your facilities are inside it, so you don't have to necessarily go anywhere outside. So that's a Class 2. Class 3 is a little bit different. Class 3, you don't have all these facilities in a Class 3, so it's kind of like a hotel, like a motel or a student accommodation, and basically you've got all these little Class 3s so these are all 3s, basically a bedroom. There's not much more than that. So you can also have in the Class 3 a common room, which could be used for eating, preparation of food, preparation of food and toilet facilities. But that makes it a Class 3 because your facilities are shared. That makes it into a Class 3. Your Class 4, which is kind of an unusual classification, but it's meant to be like a shop top, or where they have a dwelling above let's say a shop or another class. It could be a shop. It could be office. It could even be a warehouse. It could be a factory. So all these classifications sit below the class 4, but it is the only dwelling in the class 4. It was really meant to be for a caretaker, I guess, and the caretaker normally would take care of the other buildings. It could be a guy who lived in a fish and chip shop and he lived upstairs. That's your class 4. Then we start going into the commercial buildings, generally speaking. The other than the residential type. Your commercial, then you start with your 5, which is your typical sort of office building. We basically have either a bank or an accountant office or a doctor. They're basically your typical class 5. It's more like a service type of a setup. The next classification is a class 6, which is your very common retail. And 6 is basically shop. You've got your cafes, restaurants. You got your restaurant. I'm sure that's not spelled right. Got your cafes, your restaurant, and then you've got your what else do we have? We have your clothing stores and your grocery stores, even your hardware stores. At class 7, basically, there's 2 types of 7. There's the 7A and the 7B. And your sorry about that. Just a little bit of a glitch. So your 7A is your car park building. So you just basically got car parking throughout the building. So your 7As are generally car parking, and then your 7Bs are your typical warehouse. Then you've got your class 8s, which they talk about them being a laboratory or a building in which handicraft or processes for production assembly basically means a factory. I mean, that's what we're looking for in a class 8. Then you've got your class 9s. Your class 9s, you start with your 9As, and your 9As are basically a healthcare building. And by definition, that includes things like a nursing home, hospital. And then your 9Bs are basically pretty much all the assembly buildings. You've got stadiums, and you've got your halls. You've got your cinemas, pretty much anywhere where people will generally assemble. A 9C is a aged care facility, and basically incorporates both elderly who need care and elderly who don't necessarily need a lot of care. There's quite a long history to the 9C, but the main reason was because a 9A, a nursing home, people generally, 100% of the occupants of a nursing home are generally people who are in a bed and need assistance for their general normal daily activities, whereas in a 9C, an aged care facility, there may be one of the couple maybe require nursing care, but the other member or the other partner may not, which means that they have the opportunity of living together rather than sort of being separated at such a late age in their lives. To be one to be living in maybe a class 3 here, aged care, and then the other person living in a nursing home, which is a 9A. It can be quite devastating when the couple have to be split up because of health reasons. So the two people can go from the 3 and the 9A, they can go straight into a 9C and live their last few years together happily. Some important things to note: if a 1A building had a car park underneath it, which was a 7A, and that's quite common in a lot of developments, the 1A cannot possibly exist because you have another class underneath it, so that will have to make it into a 2. And primarily the reason is to provide some sort of fire protection on the floor, because 1A is the only fire separated with a fire rated wall, so they don't have any fire rated floors between them. Whereas obviously if there was a fire in this level here, you need to protect the occupants above. So that's why it's very important to identify this as a class 2 and 7, so then you can establish what fire protection you need to provide at that floor level. And only volume 2 of the BCA does that. Other important things to note are that just a reminder that the class 3 classification, the difference between the 3 and the 2 is that the 3 shares the facilities, whereas the 2 has almost all their facilities within the apartment. So all these facilities are inside the class 2. Sometimes laundries can be shared, but generally speaking, the dining, kitchen, preparation of food, bed, lounge are all within the class 2, which is, I guess, what you would commonly know as an apartment. I think I've made a mess of my paper, but I think that's just about everything that I can think of at the moment. There is a few other things when we talk about the 9A and the 9C, but I might leave that at a later date when things get more complicated. The only thing I haven't included is a 1B, and the 1B is very similar to a 1A in quite a lot of its characteristics. The only difference is that the 1B is for unrelated people, whereas the 1A is for related people. So basically the 1A is a house for your family. A 1B is your sharing accommodation, provided that the 1B is less than 300 metres squared and it's less than 12 people. And that's commonly is some sort of a little boarding house, a small boarding house, or some people who have some form of disability and are trying to live in the community and sharing accommodation with other people with similar issues are all quite important, but they would be, because they're not related, they would be living in a 1B. I think that's about it. Thank you very much.